think that'll be relevant to you, related to what's going on in the enterprise cloud space. But I think it's important to understand a little bit about where I come from and the view of the world as we see it. So I work at the best place on earth. It's the Switch Supernap. How many of you have been to the data center in Las Vegas? I can barely see. A few of you have. Some of you may have not. So it's an interesting dynamic. So if we go back about 15 years, our CEO and founder saw an interesting trend in technology. And a lot of those trends that he saw then, we're actually seeing today. And I want to give you a little preview, a little bit about what we see every day and what we've built. And I think it's actually relevant to a lot of the discussions that we've had today. And to a certain extent, we're going to get actually quite tactical about how people are executing today's technology problems and solving them on a regular basis. Now, you go back 15 years, and what he saw was in the compute industry, and as this technology was evolving, he saw the things that we see today. You know, they say that the amount of data that the average consumer will generate over their lifetime now is 4.3 exabytes. And you probably say to yourself, well, how can that be? There's no way one person can generate that much data. But when you think about the future and where we're going, more data is being collected about us that we are unaware of and that we don't know. He also saw that in order to meet that demand, it wasn't just going to be about storage, it was also about processing that data. And the computer manufacturers were doing an excellent job of actually creating a more efficient way for compute to be delivered. And what used to, in the data center world, what used to fill up a cabinet and take 2 or 3 kilowatts of power, he saw a day when that would consume 40 kilowatts of power or even 50 kilowatts of power. And so he started to create an environment that would dramatically change the way we support technology, because I don't care what you call it. You can call it cloud, you can call it mobile, you can call it mainframe, you can call it client server, you can call it web. It's still applications are written on operating systems that travel over networks that land on servers and storage that sit somewhere. And with all the strategic discussions we've had at the end of the day and where everything is going, at the end of the day, you still have got to operate and manage that environment. And what we built was a very unique environment to support that. Now, right in Las Vegas, it's over 1.6 million square feet of data center space, which is about 25,000 cabinets in a single campus. It's the largest in the world. We've got over 300 megawatts of power committed to that campus, and we support some of the most high-density compute environments on the planet. A lot of people say, you went to Las Vegas and data centers require cooling. How's that work? Right? Why aren't you in Finland? Well, we developed and patented some unique technology that allows us to cool that environment and do it in a more energy efficient way than anyone in the industry. And that's leading a lot of enterprises to actually say, you know what, if I'm going to protect the future of my infrastructure, I need to be in an environment like that. The other interesting angle of what we've done is we're also the first and only carrier-neutral facility to achieve Tier 4 Gold status from the Uptime Institute. So when it comes to reliability, resiliency being up 100% of the time, we're the best in the world at it. And it's one of the reasons why our customers come to us, but it's not the only reason. And this is why we have a lot of the customers we have. In the late 90s, early 2000s, Enron, if everybody remembers Enron, built a broadband peering arbitrage data center in Las Vegas, and they had this goal to trade bandwidth between the carriers using the same algorithms they used to trade power. And in doing that, they spent billions of dollars in this single facility in Las Vegas, and they brought multiple carriers into this facility so that they could actually trade. Well, when Enron declared bankruptcy, our CEO and founder, he spent the next 9 months and successfully pulled that facility out of Enron's bankruptcy. We have over 50 on-net carriers in that location. We can't build 1.6 million square feet of data center space unless you have the connectivity to support the data going in and out of that environment. And we created a pretty unique buying cooperative which saves our customers a tremendous amount of money. And on top of that, over the past 5 years, we've been layering some of the top cloud and managed service providers into that environment, because we have long believed that there's not going to be one cloud or one solution that's going to serve everybody's problems, right? It would be multiple. And so over the past 5 years, we've gathered over 100 different cloud providers within that ecosystem. And so our customers come in and they land their private infrastructure in the facility, and then they can easily connect to any one of these providers. And our customers are the who's who of technology and what's going on. It's eBay, it's Google, it's Logitech, it's Morgan Stanley, it's Intuit, it's Dignity Health. It's basically customers from every industry. And so we get this interesting view of the world. And I think, there's been a lot of speakers from Avasant here today, and I'm honored actually to be here, that they invited us to come and speak. But I think, just like they do, we actually see things in a unique way, because with all of these enterprise customers and Fortune 500 customers putting their infrastructure in one place, running their applications, deciding how they're going to tackle cloud and big data and analytics and the Internet of Everything, as they look at all of those things and they decide how they're going to take advantage of it, we get to participate in that. In fact, my role within the company is I focus on everything that occurs above the data center. The hardware, the applications, the people, the processes, the technology, and in many cases even the strategy on how they take advantage of an environment like this. Because when you can get everything under the same roof, you actually start to see some interesting things start to happen from a buying perspective and also from a technology perspective. And today, what I want to talk a little bit about is the role that cloud is playing and how some of our customers are looking at it and the experiences they've been having. So this is actually one of my only things that I like that Gartner's ever created. It's the hype curve, right? And if you follow this, they talk about it from the beginning, the innovation trigger, and I love their words, the peak of inflated expectations, the trough of disillusionment, the slope of enlightenment, ultimately to the plateau of productivity. And they map out various technologies that are being talked out in the industry, and many of you may have seen this before, and then they also put a timeline on it. And they say, when do we think this will get to a plateau of productivity? When it becomes something that we can actually use or that technologies want to be a part of every day. The two I want to talk about today, it looks like my arrow shifted in the transfer of the PowerPoint, but I want to talk about hybrid cloud and cloud computing. Now, I think cloud has been an interesting thing because I would say maybe it's only a year old since people actually could tell you what the cloud was, right? People would go, what is the cloud? I don't know what the cloud is, right? No one had a real answer for it. And in IT organizations, the CEO would go to a conference and everyone would tell him that the answer is in the cloud, and then he would come back and he would pound his fists on the table and we'd go to, we need to be in the cloud, and then there'd be a bunch of people, IT managers in the group going, well, we have a cloud. What are you talking about? Right? There was this real weird dichotomy, but it has started to get to a point where it's very clear what it is. And cloud, the operating model, has been around forever. You guys have all been in that business for decades, right? Let me pay someone else to do something for me. That's been around forever. But what really has been changing is cloud, the technology, which is, can I get internet-enabled in services that I can provision on demand, that I pay for only what I consume, and I can use it to leverage technology and be more agile in the way that I deploy, build, and manage applications. That's really what they're talking about when they say go to the cloud. Can I right-size my environment? Can I deliver it in an interesting way? And then can I make it cost-optimized so that it doesn't kill my budget when I try to build new applications, and can I do it more quickly? That's what they've been talking about, and that's what I want to talk about today a little bit. And in the public cloud space, we got a few top-of-mind players. Now, I've had a few people asked me what I was going to speak about today, and we're going to burn down the public cloud. That's what we're going to do today. Now, not a lot of these folks are my customers, and I don't mean to say that public cloud is something that will never be a part of any organization. But what I'm saying is where we are in the hype curve, it's creating a situation where there are opportunities for service providers like yourself and integrators like yourself to actually take advantage of something that's occurring and prevent what I believe is an upcoming storm that is inevitable. So these are some of the top-of-mind players that get talked about. People say, I want to be in AWS, I want to go be in Google, I want to be in Azure, and they don't know why. But that's what they think they want to do. Now, one of the problems with these public clouds are things that we all know, right? Once you move some workloads into that public cloud environment, you've actually handcuffed yourself to a technology platform that is unlikely you're going to be able to inexpensively extricate yourself from. If you thought Oracle was bad, the public cloud is going to be worse. And the reason is because there's limited hybrid capability. A lot of these public clouds are built on proprietary applications that once you get your stuff out there, and let's say it grows to scale, and you try to move it back into your environment, you're actually stuck because you've written your applications in such a way that they're so connected into that environment you can't get out. They also have another limitation and another problem is that as I'm moving data in and out of the cloud, and we're going to talk about this a little bit later, as I'm moving data in and out of the cloud, I start to get hit with mysterious costs. I don't know how much all of these things are costing me. And on the flip side of it, it is a well-known fact that many of the public cloud providers have also been willing to enter your business, AKA Netflix, right? Netflix took all of their infrastructure, they started and they built out into the public cloud, and now they've actually created and funded one of their biggest competitors. If I was the CEO of Netflix, I would hate writing that check every month to the person who is competing against me every day. That'd be like Coke writing a check to Pepsi for bottling and distributing their drinks. It just would not work. Now, it starts out cheap, but it ends up being very expensive. And we know this, and it's a real easy thing. We've all experienced this. When you look at that cost curve, right, you look at it and you go, okay, the cloud in the beginning is very cheap, and then as I build, the expense goes up, whereas I do my own stuff, it comes down, and it descends over time. In fact, one of the game providers, Zynga, got very good at this. They launch all their initial games into the public cloud, and then once they're there, they migrate that infrastructure back into their internal environment once they see the cost curve actually get to that inflection point. They've been very smart about that. But the challenge is not a lot of enterprise customers understand how to take advantage of this. They don't have the teams and they don't have the people who really understand all the nuances of how all this comes together. Very few of them do. I don't want to say all of them, but very few of them really have the nuances as it relates to that. And to a certain extent, when we look at the public cloud, it's still this black box. Now, I'm not going to dwell on the security issue. We all get the idea of what's going on the security side. It's all, either you're okay with it or you're not, right? You're not going to solve that problem today, and it's not going to go away. You know, the cloud provider's SLA, I think, is a 99.9% uptime in most cases on the public cloud side. If you're a $10 billion company and 99.9% SLA means you're down 6.5 hours, and if you do $10 billion a year, you're going to lose $7.5 million a year just on downtime. I don't think anybody wants to be in that situation, right? And so they have to kind of overcompensate for some of these problems. And the most important thing in all of this is that in many cases they're saying we want to go to cloud because it's going to help our cost curve. Yet they can't predict what it's going to be. We'll take the example of connectivity. This is a public cloud provider and this is their connectivity pricing. And people will say, well, I'm not going to move data in and over the public environment. I'm going to use a direct connection. I'm going to directly connect to the cloud. And they go, great, so that should reduce my cost. Well, not really, because this is their pricing per port on direct connection costs. Depending upon the amount of transport you select, you're going to pay a certain amount of cents per hour to have a port available in order for you to move data in and out of that cloud. Then, on top of it, they're going to also charge you for the amount of data you transfer over that port. So not only do you get a port fee, you also get a data transfer fee. Now, I don't know about you, but how many applications can you accurately predict how much data is going to move in and out of that environment? I can't. You know, unless you put some little metering device on there and you measure it like crazy, you're not going to get much insight into that, and this becomes extremely difficult to predict. But let's look at what it means, and let's look at a micro-level instance of this. So this is just on the connectivity side. I'm moving data in and out of the cloud. Take an enterprise application with 50 terabytes of data transfer per month. That's not a big deal for the type of customers that we're working with. It's not uncommon for that amount of data to be moved back and forth between systems or between a bunch of users and some end application. And you're doing it over this direct connect. So you said, I want this cheaper product, and so you get this direct connection into the cloud, and you start to look at this. Well, the cost is going to run me $3,000 a month just to move the data in and out of the cloud. Forget about the instances. Now let me compare that to an alternative. I could say, and this is where the public cloud starts to haunt you. I could say, well, I'm going to get a dedicated 1 gig line, and if you're in our environment, I can get that for $800 a month. That'll get you a dedicated port anywhere on the West Coast, from data center to data center. Or I can actually be in the data center where my physical infrastructure is located, have that cloud I'm using right across the aisle, and I can run a cross-connect between those two, and I can transfer speeds at 10 gig per second, and I'm just going to pay $150 a month. Just because it says it's cheaper doesn't necessarily mean it's cheaper. And the challenge with the connectivity costs associated with the public cloud is that they're very, very unpredictable. And it's hard to determine what it is. And what really were we after when we went to the cloud? To get a little bit more predictable in our cost associated with infrastructure. One of the great things I love about the public cloud is one of the things they did for all of us who manage infrastructure for companies and make sure all this stuff works and make sure everything is up and deliver value to the end business, is that they put a bogey out there for us. They've published a number and they said, well, we think this is what it should cost. Now the cloud wars have been going on and they've been compressing price and they've been doing all the things that they want to do, and we're all in the middle of all of that conversation, trying to make sure that we can deliver value. Well, one of our customers has a specific use case, and this customer went all in the public cloud. And they said, we're going to go all in, we're going to put all of our stuff out into the cloud, we're going to start leveraging that technology, and it's going to save us money. So they went out in the public cloud and they took an average size of a VM, and after they were out there for a year, they looked at it and they found out their costs were $250 per VM per month. It's kind of where they came in. So that was their cost per virtual machine. Now they had 4,000 instances in their environment. Now at the end of the year, after their first year of being in the public cloud, they totaled up their bill. It was $20 million for 4,000 instances. That's a lot of money. $12 million for infrastructure and over $8 million in connectivity in moving data in and out of that cloud. And they started to look at it and say, wait a second, okay, now we know what the number is. Maybe we should start to pull back from that. And as they started to break down where this $250 per VM number came from, because this wasn't on the bill. By the way, that's another problem with public cloud. Try and interpret any of the bills associated with it. It's nearly like our telephone bills were 15, 20 years ago. You can't even make sense of it. But they started to break it down, and they said, well, if we look at that $250 per month per VM, what we find out is that there are significant costs in over-provisioning. Because in the public cloud, you don't know necessarily always what facility your application's in. And so they ended up over-provisioning instances in other areas because it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when the cloud will go down. You have to plan for that differently. And the HA environment in the public cloud actually has to be created from scratch. You have to actually create it from scratch. Then they started looking at it and they said, well, we also have to do business continuity and DR because guess what? In our production, in the cloud environment, there's no magic backup button. You now have to create a whole series of expertise and a series of talents and a series of people around the idea of managing this business continuity and disaster recovery. There's no easy way to get and go, okay, I'm just going to push the button and off we go. It doesn't exist. Now you have to create a new infrastructure around that. And then there's management overhead. So in many cases, you've already got a bunch of infrastructure or software that manage what's going on related to that environment. They found out that they were creating a significant amount of infrastructure in the cloud, that they were duplicating what they had internally. And so when they peeled it all away and they said, let's actually move and let's go private, they got down to $36 a VM per month in a private cloud in a tier 4 data center. Now a lot of people would say, well, that's not possible, but that's the opportunity actually, I believe, for the service provider. When it comes to competing with the public cloud, and we're talking at scale, without a doubt, I would never suggest that public cloud will not be a part of every company's future. There will be a part of that infrastructure that's there. But when it comes to running the applications and delivering value and delivering those technologies in a way that's cost effective and in a way that can scale, in a way that can deliver it in such a way, what I am saying is the opportunity exists to bring your expertise to the table, to create that private cloud, to deliver it at a lower cost, and to give them all the benefits that they're hoping for. That's really what it's all about. And to a certain extent, their teams themselves can't do it. So when they talk about IT transformation, they're not just talking about, we want to change from this gear to that gear. They're actually saying we need to get into a more agile state because they haven't been. They've been stuck under the old paradigm. They go out and they buy a tremendous amount of infrastructure. They overbuy. They don't have a way to scale. They don't have a financial model. They don't have any tools to determine how much it's costing. And now what they're saying when they say IT transformation, that's what they're asking for. Better visibility, better performance, more flexibility, and the ability to take advantage of these new technologies that are out there. Because the savings have been pretty dramatic. And this, actually, infrastructure, a lot of people, when I showed this slide, they said, oh, well, they must have done that on commodity hardware. They did it on a vBlock. This customer did it on a vBlock. And they went from $20 million a year for running that environment down to $9 million a year when they moved it in-house. And that was people, that was overhead, that was software, that was technology, that was the hardware, that was the data center, that was the connectivity, that was that all-in number. they reduce their cost by $11 million a year by bringing it in-house. So in every industry where we've seen this occur, higher ed, financial services, gaming, they've all seen benefits as a result of this. And in this case, I'm using the V-block as an example, but there's other converged infrastructure that also wins in the same way, and it delivers that same value. Now, I think when we look at that hype curve, what we've seen is people have experimented. Enterprises have experimented with the public cloud, and they said, let's go out, let's understand what it is, let's start working on it. But I think we're in the middle of an interesting trend, because even Donna Scott from Gartner says any well-run enterprise private cloud will be cheaper than a public cloud. The trick is that well-run part. That's the trick. And most enterprises can't do the well-run part on their own, mostly because they started with these structures of, we have a server guy, we got a networking guy, and we got a storage guy, we got a software guy, and we got, and they're all guys, and sorry ladies in the room, but they're usually all guys, right? They've got these people that run in these silos, and they're thinking, how do I transform my team? And they don't have a way to do it. They can't get from point A to point B. They're having a hard time getting there. And their facilities are constrained. When they buy these converged infrastructures, they're putting a lot of compute in a single cabinet. Their data center can't support it. The connectivity requirements are going through the roof. They have no way of getting there. Environments like we've built at Switch are actually enabling that kind of transformation, allowing them to get to these environments. And as an expert in the area, you've got the ability to do the same thing we've done with data center. We focus on data center, we do it day in and day out, and we do it better than anyone else in the world. Service providers have an opportunity now to say, we actually run IT and technology better than anyone in the world. And so what we're bringing to you, customer, is a way to get from point A to point B, because technology is no longer an industry. It is the underlying fabric of any business. There are very few businesses I know of where technology isn't playing a critical role in what they're doing. And they think there's these magic answers out there. They're always looking for a magic button. They're always looking for some way to get there. And what they're finding is that this public cloud, although helps them launch new services and get them to a certain point, it's not really solving the problem in the big scale. In fact, we're seeing a departure, right? Large retailer Target, they left because they decided it was in their best interest to assume full control of what their environment. A large pharmaceutical company, their issue was they just won't assume any liability. There's one contract, you can take it or leave it. It doesn't work for them. You have the ability to make that change. Now, so what are some of the opportunities out there? And I think this is that idea of transformation. The idea of the public cloud, it's not an or, it's an and. It's a term we use a lot in everything that we're doing. Is something that's going to replace what's already been done? And in our opinion, the public cloud is going to be an and, not an or. The question is, how are companies going to embrace it, and are the right technologies being put out there in order to deliver these values? And so you think about cloud the model versus cloud the technology, understanding what the customer is asking for when they say we want to go to the cloud. Why is that? What is it about that they're hoping to get or they expect to get out of that? When you think about a differentiated offering or a way to add value and agility to a platform that is struggling, right? Or a predictable cost model, helping them understand. I think one of the interesting things we're seeing is the idea that you can buy dedicated infrastructure but pay for it on a by-use model. Right? Those are kind of interesting financial models that we're seeing come to bear. And these new orchestrated architectures, you've seen some acquisitions of software out in the space that's helping companies get an overarching view of what's going on in their private environment, the public environment. We all know what IT organizations are going to look like in the future. They're going to look very much like very, very advanced vendor management groups. How do we keep all these technologies in line? How do we enable the enterprise? How do we become that driver for the business? And so it's this hybrid approach to how all this stuff is going to work, and it's extremely critical. The reason why it's critical, though, is because there is a coming storm. If people fail in this transformation that's occurring now, they are going to hit the wall in the next 3 to 5 years as it relates to cloud. And it's all tied back to this hype curve and a little thing at the top called the Internet of Things, or the Internet of Everything. By 2020, Cisco is predicting that there'll be 50 billion devices connected to the Internet. And one of the things that we're seeing is that cloud, to a certain extent, just like a ubiquitous communications has become an enabler to cloud computing, on the infrastructure side. The Internet of Things or cloud computing is becoming an enable for the Internet of Everything. With all these devices that are going to be connected, it's kind of an interesting dynamic when you look at it. And this is kind of the curve that's been talked about as it relates to what's going to happen out there. First, we've got these networked consumer electronics. This next phase is networked industry, and then a networked everything and a networked society. Now, I would argue that we're somewhere down here in the first wave right now, but we're right approaching up to the second wave from the things that we're seeing. Industries are starting to realize that they can start to gather more data and information about what's going on out there than they've ever been able to before. And right now in our homes, we've got devices that'll allow us to do that. The average consumer today has 5 connected devices to the internet per person. Now a year ago it was 3. I have 4 teenage daughters. I have 37 connected devices in my house. The most important one is my Sony PS4. That one's mine. No one's allowed to touch that, and I have priority bandwidth on my router set up so that I make sure that I've always got full capacity of everything. So we're in this wave where consumers are doing, but this is about to start to make it into the enterprise. And here's the interesting thing about all this. The devices at the end, they are really, really dumb. They're really dumb. They do one thing and they gather data. That data then has to make it back somewhere where it can be processed and it can be integrated with other information and it can be analyzed. So this stuff is growing at scale and it's going to grow very rapidly. We're going to have end devices in enterprises. We're already seeing it in the agricultural industry. I have an agricultural company who's knocking on our door who we've never considered a prime data center customer just because it was agriculture. It tends to happen out there in the field where stuff's grown. They're now implementing technology that goes out into the farms, gather data about how irrigation is being done, about the weather, about the status of the soil. It's feeding that stuff back. They're taking that and they're analyzing it with data that's available from all over the globe, with mapping data, with global data, and they're actually leveraging that information to more optimize the way they grow in that area. Right? That's just one aspect of it. When you think of all the other industries and where this is going to play, if a company does not have a good cloud strategy, or I would say a agile infrastructure strategy that's going to leverage a combination of things that they own as well as stuff that's in the public cloud, they're not going to be able to make it. They will miss the coming opportunity, and then they're going to be playing catch up because they're going to be 2 transformations behind. They won't just be behind the Internet of Everything transformation, they're also going to be behind the infrastructure transformation. I mean, this is where the technology is going. This is why we're all continuing to be involved in these discussions, because it is going to be a major part of what they're doing. It is no longer that technology is just some industry. It's the underlying fabric of everything that's actually being done. And what it's going to take this environment is actually pretty interesting. This is actually some video of some sample of some of our customers that are doing what I could equate to as high-performance computing in the enterprise. It isn't just about running applications. This is about the value stuff that's giving business visibility into what's going on. These are high-density compute environments married with large-scale storage environments so that they can analyze their data. You cannot take these large data sets and scatter them all over the place and hope to analyze them anymore. Unstructured data is the way everything is being captured today. It's gone away from, as we think of data, it's the tables and rows. In this Internet of Everything, it's all this unstructured data that's basically just tagged. And as that unstructured data is tagged, the idea is you store everything. You don't want anything to go away because you never know what question you're going to want to ask. The most important thing of big data is you don't know what you don't know. So you don't want to let anything go. You want to make sure it's there. And to do that, you got to make sure the data and the compute are actually aggregated together, because when you ask the question, it goes in and it analyzes all the data, gathers the relevant information, organizes it, and then presents the answer to you. Now imagine, and one of our customers, you saw one of the data arrays there from Teradata, one of our customers has an 80 petabyte data warehouse in our facility. It's all unstructured data. Now, if you want to ask it a question, and the sub-data set that you have to pull out is a petabyte, and that data set somewhere else, it takes 10 days to move 1 petabyte of data over a 10 gigabit circuit, which is the highest capacity circuit you can reasonably buy today. We'll have 40 and 100 gig down the road. But I hate to tell you, but 10 days is not real time. In real terms, it's actually faster to pack up and ship that storage array via FedEx than it is to move it over an internet line when you're talking about that data set size. And so the future of this is that the data and the compute actually have to be co-located together. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to meet the compute and analytics demands to do it in real time. Our customers are realizing that, and they realize that where things are going, this is actually what's going to be needed. And it does not dismiss the idea that public cloud will play a role in all of this, because it isn't just how they're consuming their internal infrastructure, but from time to time, they're going to need excess capacity. They're going to want to develop a new project. Maybe dev and test sits in the public cloud. There's a lot of use cases for it. But when it comes to enterprise applications, there's a unique opportunity to bring that and run it in-house. Now, I think one of the most interesting things that we see at Switch is just this idea of how people are transforming their technology and the way enterprises are going. And the one thing that I believe 100% is that the future is very bright. There are a tremendous amount of opportunities, even with all the changes that are going on. Those underlying changes are to go, these are the things that should be automated and should be easy. We need to make sure those things get easy, because the things that are about to come are going to be really hard. The Internet of Everything is going to be really hard. It's going to put data in enterprises' hands that they never had before. New decision frameworks are going to be made. New ways of running the business are going to need to be created. New ways that infrastructure and IT and technology is managed within the organizations need to be created. And it's all going to be an important part of that total solution. The interesting thing is the business you're in, at least the way we see it, I believe there is a tremendous opportunity to be the leaders in that and actually show them how they can do it by leveraging the expertise you have within your teams and creating technology differentiators that make a difference in the business.